Hello and welcome. With the damp weather, the continued rain, there is the return of the leeches. But I think I've picked most of them up and put them somewhere safe. So on to your first question here to begin with. What are your thoughts on the Christian idea that embracing suffering can lead to personal transformation? Well, I don't really have any thoughts on any Christian ideas, and I haven't really heard in the context of Christianity the idea that embracing suffering can lead to personal transformation, other than in the sense of martyring oneself, martyrdism, that is, in the name of something, causing yourself suffering or sacrifice, pain, to prove a point. This is very contrary to Buddhism. What I've said in the past that often provokes these questions comparing different religions and philosophies to Buddhism is more an implication where I have implied that the Dharma never suffers by comparison to other religions or philosophies, because it requires no belief and is simply a statement of truths that we can all see for ourselves and experience within this lifetime. The truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, end of suffering, and then the practice of Buddhism, again, is not prayer or worship, but the path leading to the end of suffering, which are refraining from unwholesome activities or practicing moral virtue, meditation and wisdom. With regards to Buddhism, it is a fundamental part of right view and the development of wisdom to see that all beings, from us human beings to the little leeches that I've picked up and placed somewhere safely, to experience suffering. This is the nature of samsara as a result of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and our lack of control over these physical bodies and thinking brains. So that's really what I can say on that. There's a little number on this comment which refers to a place in the video, and I'm not even sure which video it's relating to, but I can remember where we were talking about revenge and anger, where this might have come up. And you quote, or you say, that pity is the near enemy of compassion. Anyone can pity, but compassion comes from understanding the other person's situation. And that is absolutely correct, and it even says so in the suttas that you have quoted. But out of context, this is taken where I'm using the word pity as a tool, as a way to develop compassion. When someone is aggressing you, someone is causing you direct suffering, rather than feel angry and have revenge, then use the near enemy of compassion, pity, as a step towards compassion. So don't take it literally that all of the near enemies of, say, metta, for instance, has the near enemy of love and attraction, lust, and this kind of amorous loving kindness, as opposed to unconditional loving kindness for all beings. Compassion, as is just quoted, karuna. Mudita, joy, well, I can't remember the near enemy to that. Upekkha, equanimity, the near enemy to that is not caring, being nonchalant, not giving a damn about what's going on around you. This is not equanimity, this is not a quality, this is not upekkha. This is acting like an ignorant animal that is just eating and not really caring what's going on around it. But Indeed, equanimity is to react wisely, react with on an informed level, necessarily to satisfy or deal with a situation that needs attending to, not being so. These are those near enemies. So you're absolutely right, but out of context, yes, that's correct. But in the context, I was using pity the fool, not suggesting that anyone that attacks you is necessarily a fool, or that you should just have pity for them, but using that phrase, and these are only words, these are coined phrases to remind us and help us develop the true quality of compassion, and the true quality of understanding that they are not fools, they're not knowledge-less or ignorant, which is avijja, but they are deluded, which is moha in Pali, delusion. It doesn't mean you don't have the technical or intellectual knowledge, but you're perhaps not really understanding it or knowing how to apply it correctly. This is understanding your assailant, and these words I was using just in that context, really. Is it okay for a lay person to wear a pendant with the image of the Buddha face, brackets face question mark? I think it's beautiful and a peaceful image that can remind me or bring me back to the pristine and pure qualities of the Buddha. But I hear wearing amulets with Buddha images is looked down on. Is that true? What are your thoughts on this? So anything that reminds you of the qualities of the Buddha, as the Tipiso chant, the 9 qualities of the Buddha, is a good thing. Wearing amulets isn't looked down upon. It is for someone on the 8 precepts, so living in a monastery, or anyone on 8 precepts and above that, 10 precepts, 75 precepts, 227 or 311, are all inclusive of those 8 precepts, which precludes the wearing of any jewelry. It in fact specifies even malas. So even these mala counting beads, you can have them but not wear them around your neck or your wrists, technically speaking. But as an instrument for recollection or meditation or part of practice, as a tool, that's okay, it's acceptable. But probably in the monastery you wouldn't hold or hang around your neck amulets or jewelry, but you can, even monks I've seen might have an amulet with a Buddha rupa, a Buddha image contained within it, hanging off their belt, so it's hidden under their robes. I have a Buddha amulet with a full Buddha rupa with inside it that someone gave me in Thailand, so I care for it, look after it, as it was an offering of dana. And it's hanging on my shrine. If I travel, it stays in my bag and then gets placed on whichever shrine, wherever I might be in the future. So these things are fine and they're not looked down upon. And as a lay person, you can wear what you like, do what you like, and I think there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's perfectly okay, especially if it's bringing about good states of mind for you. I've been experiencing, but remember, when you go to stay in the monastery, you might just have to put it away in your bag or in your little something you carry around with you with your necessary items. So it's not on display, so to speak, as jewelry. I've been experiencing nibbida for some time now. Oh, this is, I think, the question I couldn't get to yesterday or last time. It is an effort to go along with outings, no matter who it might be. My family think I've become withdrawn, but they don't understand that it is exactly as you say, pointless and not satisfactory. Sorry, I'm laughing because, yes, that is what I say. I said here amongst friends, Kalyanamita Dharma followers. Not meaning, I hope you didn't directly perhaps say to your friends or family when they offered you an invitation to go somewhere nice, no thank you, I think it's pointless and unsatisfactory, because that wouldn't be quite right speech. It would be a little bit ungrateful and impolite. But whatever your feelings, sometimes it's useful to continue to go along on these outings if people want you to accompany them for the right reasons. So if they're expecting you to be full of joy and excitement over something that you feel is pointless and satisfactory, then there's no need to pretend. You can politely decline the invitation for whatever reason, or just simply say you're not really interested in going to such a thing. But if it does you no harm and you have the time, or doesn't put them to any expense unnecessarily, they're not wasting their money, and it would be beneficial for you to accompany them because they're maybe elderly and want to go somewhere and they need your support, or they're young and you need to take them to something, then that's a good offering of dana, service, your own time to help others. But usually people within our own, what would you call it, peer group of our own age, abilities and everything in common, you can say, oh, I'm not interested in doing that anymore. They wouldn't be offended. It would only be younger or older people who might be offended by you not wanting to go. But see it as a way of offering kindness to them by going, and then using the experience as practice. Everything we experience is practice, but when you have to go to events that you don't particularly want to go to, and as monks, we have to go often. I'm fortunate here, but back in India I go to many big festivals and events one's expected to attend as the Sangha, that can go on for, well, hours, but days sometimes. And really they're not of no interest to me and seem pointless and unsatisfactory, but they're of great benefit to those attending. So I'm happy to give that time. And my encouragement comes from that opportunity to give something I can give, because all I have to give is time. I have nothing else. So in that respect, consider it that way. And yes, this is nibbida, which means disenchantment, the Pali word for becoming disenchantment with what we might have previously been very interested in worldly life. We may have lost interest in going to the cinema, going to pubs and clubs, singing and dancing, going to restaurants, and this will naturally happen. So bear that in mind. It will also act as the natural progression towards developing kalyanamita, as I mentioned earlier, which means noble friendships or beautiful friendships, friends in the Dharma whom are also practicing, as opposed to those who are maybe encouraging you by only, not by words, but their own activities, going to pubs, clubs and restaurants and the cinema and things, to move away from the Dharma to more sensual, stimulating kinds of distracting worldly things, to keep them company and keep them going with that lifestyle. This nibbida, this disenchantment with that, acts as a natural progression towards a break in that friendship. It doesn't mean you have to fall out, part in any negative way, but you may see less and less gradually of those friends that do those sorts of things, and more of those friends that prefer to go to the monastery or to sit at home and meditate or to discuss the Dharma with you. It's a slow progression. Don't drop it all in at once and say, no, I'm not interested in this anymore, it's pointless and unsatisfactory. It will never go down well in a worldly household. So intoxicants are forbidden, but what about psychedelics that don't dull the mind? Coffee is a mild drug that enhances the mind. So are some drugs. Are some drugs acceptable? Intoxicants refers to drugs that dull the mind, as opposed to stimulants. Intoxicants is one word, stimulants is another word. Caffeine, nicotine even, come under the description of stimulants. I mean, everything's a drug. Oxygen, anything that's going into your body could be seen as a drug. But again, this is just words. Nothing is forbidden. You can do what you want, absolutely what you like. You can wear 10 tons of gold bangles and jewellery around your neck, have tattoos from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, listen to rock music, dance naked down the high street, drinking bottles and bottles of whiskey, taking psychedelics, and all of these things. Oh, nobody's stopping you except maybe the laws of the land. I'm certainly not. What we're discussing here is what we want to do within our lives that will enhance our ability to become free from suffering within this lifetime, to develop our physical bodies, but mainly our thinking brains, and ultimately condition our minds as a result of that towards contentment, towards happiness, and ultimately freedom from suffering in this lifetime, freedom from rebirth. That is nibbana, the ultimate state of peace, tranquility, contentment. Now, this does not come about by taking intoxicants, because intoxicants, whilst not necessarily morally wrong, they form or are the fifth precept, and the wording is refrain from intoxicants that lead to heedlessness or lead to a lack of mindfulness. Remembering that Buddhism is about mindfulness, just being careful with everything we do, think, say, and act. All of our actions of body, speech and mind we should be mindful about, careful about, in order that we do ourselves no harm and others no harm. Now, we all know from experience, when one's had a few drinks, there is more of a tendency to tell the odd fib, white lie, let's say, or exaggerate. Maybe take a little bit more of something than you're entitled to. Not really stealing, but just push the boundaries on that. Maybe be a little bit less responsible in our sexual relationships, and even be a bit more haphazard about maybe killing insects or killing something, but that's perhaps not the main issue. But either way, any of those precepts, if one is prone as a result of intoxicants to break them, this is what is discouraged by the fifth precept. So drinking coffee to keep yourself awake is not going to lead to mindlessness, heedlessness, or a lack of mindfulness. In fact, it's a stimulant that assists with mindfulness. The addiction that may come as a result of drinking too much coffee or caffeine intake is another matter entirely. It's not in relation to the fifth precept. It's in relation to encouraging tanha, which is craving, thirst, unwholesome desire, as opposed to chanda, which is wholesome desire. So the desire to meditate isn't a bad thing. It is still desire, but it's not the cause of suffering, because you want to meditate, which will help to reduce suffering. But the desire for more and more coffee, and you haven't got enough coffee, and the suffering as a result of not having enough coffee, for instance, then that is tanha, that is unwholesome desire, because whether you have the coffee or not is going to make no difference. But it's the difference between wholesome desire and unwholesome desire. As far as psychedelics are concerned, I don't know anything about them, but anything that's going to affect cognivity, mind, mental capacity and understanding, then I would suggest is an intoxicant, and something that the Buddha is referring to in the fifth precept. If you are comfortable with your brain surgeon operating on your brain, or your airline pilot flying your 700 passenger jet across the Atlantic under the influence of, say, those psychedelics or whatever you might describe, then that is your view. I would suggest it's perhaps not advisable and wrong view. But most of us are quite okay with that brain surgeon or that airline pilot having a few cups of coffee, even smoking some cigarettes before they take off or before you go under the knife. That is okay. The reason being is because they don't affect his ability to do the job. I'm pretty sure psychedelics would affect your ability to do the job, as does marijuana and other various drugs. A question that's been asked so many times, but I thought it's not been aired for a little while, so I hope you don't mind me just going through it again. In 3 months or so, 2 months or so, these questions do automatically get chapterized, so you can skip through them. But I did look at this to see if that was happening. It is happening still, but sometimes the titles are a little misleading, so I'm not sure it's much help. It doesn't hurt to remind ourselves of our own reasoning behind what we're doing anyway. No point blindly keeping 5 precepts if we don't know why. We should always understand why, the results of killing. What would happen if I just killed all those leeches? Well, I would have taken life. And the karmic responsibility of that is enormous. I think that's some kind of fish that man is selling. That alo, I think, means fish. I could be wrong. He's not saying hello. Okay, I found meditative walking very useful. Question, how do you set your pace for meditative walking? And are you mindful of your breath and your footsteps? Are you mindful of the surroundings whilst meditative walking? Okay, meditative walking is not part of our practice, and this is just words I know, but we have walking meditation, which is simply walking from in a straight line, about 20 to 30 paces on the flat from point A to point B and back again, without looking around, just with our mindfulness directed, our conscious awareness focused on the foot lifting, moving, placing, and then the next foot lifting, moving, placing, the process of walking itself. Only that. So going for a nice walk in the countryside or along the beach is a lovely thing to do, enjoying nature. And you may find it meditative, but that isn't walking meditation. You cannot go into samadhi or absorbed states of absorption. It's difficult with a very simple and direct straight path back and forth 30 paces, but you can develop a degree of absorption through walking meditation that way. Its primary objective is to get exercise or a break from sitting meditation, to stretch the limbs and oil the joints, so to speak, and also to awaken oneself by inhaling more oxygen by the physical activity. And setting the pace should be just at slightly less than normal walking pace, but really whatever suits your mood. If your mood is very agitated, you have a lot of restlessness and worry, anxiety and agitation and mental proliferation going on, then just walk quickly up and down, up and down, up and down, in no particular way, until the body begins to gradually start to settle and the mind begins to gradually slow down in the thinking process. The proliferation becomes less. And as this process happens, you can accordingly adjust. It will naturally adjust your pace of walking. Walking meditation isn't about walking like a zombie extra slow. It is in some practices and it may be useful, but I prefer to walk at a slightly less than normal walking pace. Now I walk quite quickly anyway, so I'm told. So when I'm walking in meditation, it might be more quickly than you might walk ordinarily speaking. The speed is not that relevant. It's the mindfulness of the action, the feeling of physically walking itself, which is what we address our conscious awareness or focus our conscious awareness on. This is our meditation object in the case of walking meditation. And as someone added on, there are detailed walking meditation videos here on this channel. I don't know, go for the most recent. I haven't done one since I've been here, but there's one in Thailand, which I think I explain the mechanics of what one does, how you set this up. But when you're going out you're saying, do you pay attention to the surroundings? No, not not if you can help it. If you're going out to enjoy the surroundings, go out to enjoy the surroundings. If you're practicing walking meditation, practice walking meditation. Don't kid yourself thinking because you've walked a long way in beautiful surroundings that you've enjoyed, that's been meditation. No, it's been walking a long way with beautiful surroundings that you've enjoyed. Meditation is when you sit and you allow the mind to stop thinking. Your mind may have calmed down as a result of nature surrounding you, and it will, and it's conducive towards that. And the Buddha says that this is where we can take advantage of being in nature. It's very conducive to our overall development of wholesome mind states and the reduction of unwholesome mind states. So in itself it's a very good practice, yes, but it's very different to the practice of actual walking meditation, which we refer to when referring to the sitting, standing, walking or lying down, 4 common postures of meditation, where we endeavour, or not endeavour in terms of try, but we allow ourselves to develop the ability to have samadhi, that is single-pointed focus on one meditation object, whether it be the breath when sitting or the feet and walking process when walking, in order to calm the mind, developing peace, tranquility, we call samatha, allowing us to absorb into samadhi. What is your opinion, perspective on Buddhist sects that allow ordained monks to marry and have children? Well, Buddhist monks are celibate, as are Buddhist nuns celibate, and single. We leave our families. We can have had a family, but we need to be, I don't think it's necessarily a requirement that one has to be divorced. I personally am. It's kind of, I suppose it's a legal thing, depending on what country you're coming from. But you certainly have to have broken all ties with your family, and have no more responsibilities to that family. Because if you have responsibilities to that family, you cannot take dependence on the Sangha, which is what you do when you ordain. And the precept of celibacy, the third precept, changing from refraining from sexual misconduct to refraining from any sexual activity, is foremost also it's not even a disrobable offence. You are just instantly not a monk if you have any form of sexual relations whatsoever. That's the way it is. So I don't have an opinion or view, because to my knowledge, anything that exists of that kind is way outside the parameters as to what I understand to be Buddhism, and as to what a Buddhist monk or a Buddhist nun is. You can have had family, you can have had wives, but you have then become detached from those. You've renounced that former life to the new life in the robes. In modern cultures, there's been all kinds of adaptations, and even ancient cultures, but the Vinaya, the rules the Buddha put in place for monks and nuns, has remained constant, unchanged, the same for 2,568 years. So, for me, it's hard to understand angry due to being annoyed. I'd never been in a state of revenge or overly angry to someone, but I'm constantly annoyed. Okay, so this is again, I mean, I was getting a point across with regards to anger and revenge and being really part of the three defilements, the 3 root defilements: greed, hatred, delusion. Anger and revenge comes from hatred being the strongest form of disliking, not wanting, the opposite of desiring something, whereas greed is the strongest form of wanting, desiring, hatred is the strongest form of not wanting, not desiring. So much you would eradicate it to not have it in your life. Now, this then has gradual or gradients of strength as we go down with different words. These are just words. A philosophy is a whole idea, a way of living. It's not just black letters, like I said the other day, on white paper. You take it literally and then you know all the answers. You have to put it all together like an instruction book. You have to make the thing or use the thing that the instructions are for in order to understand and use it correctly. So, or have benefit from it. So, no, you may not have become angry through being annoyed, but some people do become angry through being annoyed. You're fortunate and you haven't. Hello. And that's a good thing, isn't it? So see that as a positive, see that as a benefit, that you can be annoyed and it doesn't make you angry. But also see how it can be for some easy to jump from just a little bit annoyed to being quite angry, and even ultimately someone seeking revenge. These are just graduations on that development of that unwholesome mind state that I was referring to then. So I do understand, yeah, you can be annoyed with lots of things and not angry. You can be angry and not even show it, not even demonstrate it. The last of the fetters to actually be able to eradicate an arahant has finally eradicated greed, hatred and delusion. But Sakadagami, Anagami, so the stage just before attaining to arahant, one still has conceit. Conceit, not in the conceit of Sakaya Ditti, personality view, but conceit that maybe others are better than you. Because conceit in Buddhism is both ways. You are better than others, or others might be better than you, or even that you are the same as others, or the others are the same as you. Any opinion in that respect is considered conceit, and anger and conceit are the last of the 10 fetters to finally be eradicated. And if you think of it logically, there's always going to be that comparison. It's our benchmark for understanding how we are in this given form, in this human realm, as a thinking brain and a physical body. To compare to even our teacher, that our teacher is the Buddha. We're not as good as the Buddha yet. To some extent, that is a form of conceit. And that remains right up until you can drop that as an arahant, as does anger. Now, anger can also come from a place of compassion. You can be quite angry that someone isn't looking after themselves well, for instance. Someone's not doing much good for the world, or they're harming the world. But specifically, someone may harm themselves, and that could make you angry. But you wouldn't use anger, you would use compassion to direct towards them, to try and assist, to try and help them. And that wouldn't be a problem. But anger is there at the root of it. So greed, hatred and delusion, these root defilements that we endeavour through our practice to try and eradicate, are right there until the very end, but in varying degrees until very, very subtle. Okay. Here's another, we have an expression in English, oh, that old chestnut, meaning as a very regular. So don't switch off, because I always answer in a slightly different way. But here we go. I have somewhat unrelated question. Do you accept everything given to you in alms, such as meat, since it may or may not undermine sila? Thank you. We accept anything offered into our bowl. Specifically, however, we do not accept any money, that is cash, donations, money like that, or any raw grains, any raw food that requires cooking. Raw, obviously salad or fruit is fine. Meat-wise, we cannot accept human elephant, lion, leopard, hyena, or snake. Any of those 6 forms of meat, which I should hope nobody would offer anyway. But anything else we accept gratefully. It doesn't mean we have to eat it. Also, if we had the thought that anybody had specifically killed an animal to make that meat especially available for us, though, so for instance, they do this some places, you know, they'll have a chicken, and when they're ready to give it to someone, they'll cut its head off and then give you the chicken, so it's nice and fresh. If that was to happen, you could not accept it, not just because it's raw, but because you knew it was killed for you specifically. We cannot accept that. That would be breaking sila. But to eat meat in itself, vegetarianism is not a requirement of Buddhism in the Southern School. The precept has been, or the idea has been adapted in later commentaries of the suttas and later traditions, schools of Buddhism. And I personally don't eat meat or dairy products or eggs, but that's my choice. It's not a requirement. If that was all there was to eat, however, I would, because I'd have to survive. I wouldn't do myself harm out of principle. And anything that's offered to me, I gratefully receive. But I thought I'd include the list of meats because I never remember them before. So I quickly looked them up this time. When it refers to, did I say lion? I didn't mean lion, I meant tiger. Tiger and leopard. It specifically refers to tiger and leopard. That's sort of to the exclusion of lions or other big cats and things. I think it generally means, and with hyena, I think it generally means cats and dogs nowadays, one could say. It's perhaps best not to eat cats and dogs, and I really wholeheartedly agree with that one. Snakes, I'm not sure. I mean, I've eaten eels in the past. You know, I come from England, and eels, jellied eels, eels are not really snakes, but one could consider them snakes of the sea, couldn't one? But they're not really fish either, so I don't know how that goes down with that one. But this was a long time ago, and I used to then eat, in those days, a long time ago, eat meat also, sausages and all kinds of things. So, you know, we do things in our lives. We have to survive. We have to keep these bodies healthy. And culturally, our cultural environment is going to have a lot to really determine that and as to how we live. I mean, the Tibetan monks do very well because they don't eat meat, but they live on. They have very little in the way of vegetables also in the climate. Not so much now. There aren't so many in the Himalayan regions. They've all had to move to India. But even those that live in that particular climate who are very devout Buddhists don't eat meat out of choice. But also there isn't much in the way of meat there. But they eat yak's milk and dairy products and sampa, which is like a wheat grain that's ground to a flour, and survive on that. And then in the springtime, when some herbs and leaves grow, they can eat those. So we eat what's available to us in our environment. Sometimes, I don't know why, but after the morning meditation and blessings, I feel a little bit angry and that it's over and I have to continue my day. Any advice? Oh, well, because you're enjoying it, so you feel a little bit, there's an example, a little bit angry. It's not so much annoyed, it's anger. Oh, damn, that went quickly. I wish it could go on for the rest of the day and I didn't have to do my duties. But what we should be doing with that, because it's so very short, it's only, I meditate from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Then we have the chanting, live, short meditation and blessings. Then I go on Pindapata, alms round, at 6:30. So it's only half an hour in total. But you take with you, as I do take with me, because at the end of the meditation I think, well, that was only 15 minutes, it's so short. And I could just sit there for the rest of the morning quite happily, but have duties. But you take that with you. It can be the chanting. If your mind's active, take the chanting with you in your mind. Chanting Itipi So, reflecting on the qualities of the Buddha, on the Dharma, on the Sangha, or whatever chant it may have been on that particular day. Or just a couple of lines, one line from that chant is enough to repeat in your mind to help your mind become a little bit more tranquil and peaceful, like a mantra. Take it with you. Or if the meditation was particularly good and you're having a calm day, then take the meditation with you as mindfulness in all of your daily activities. The point of that beginning of the day practice is to do that, to encourage us to continue that theme. It's the way to start the day. It's not to get it over and done with, finished with, and now the day starts. It's to ease you into the day and take it with you, like morning stretches or exercises that people might do. It's exercising and stretching the mind in its wholesome capacities towards metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, joy, and upekkha, equanimity. This is what we're developing in the morning, in that short half-hour time. Please come and join me for that, because it's increasing very gradually, the number. But there's not so many that join live. But by the end of a day, quite a few have watched, so presumably been able to watch it at their 6 a.m. in the morning. I'm sure it would similarly work. It wouldn't be much different if you use it in the evening as well. But if you can make that little extra half hour at the beginning of your day before you go to work, and if you do feel a little bit angry that it's over, that's a good thing. You're recognizing the quality and the purpose of that practice. You're also looking forward to being able to do it again tomorrow and coming back to it to do it again tomorrow. It's free, it's available. You can do it even without. I had to skip a day this week. I had some technical issues. I couldn't get it to work. So on that, I wasn't there, but I hoped and still carried on my own practice, but within that, hoped that you were all doing the same, continuing with your own version, even if you just take the half hour to meditate, have an extra 15 minutes of meditation and maybe reflect on some chanting. But whatever you do, if it's the beginning of your day, it should continue throughout the rest of your daily activities, not just end there. So it's good that you feel a little bit angry that it's over, but turn that negative mind state into a positive mind state by it being recognition that you are seeing the benefits of what you're doing, and we'll come back to it again tomorrow. Or stop at lunchtime and listen to it again. They're all on there. You can go back for years now, 2 years. I think I've been doing this on YouTube, maybe 2.5 years, I think. Most days there's been live chanting in different styles as well. In Thailand, I've perhaps not done that when I was in Thailand, but in India, I've done the Thai style, the Indian style, the Sri Lankan style. Here, I just do my own kind of style. But you can find it in that chanting book. It's available there, the one that the link I send to many people very often with the English translations. Mine are just, my short chanting in the morning is just excerpts from that chanting book. Very much excerpts, because it's a combination of our Sangha in India's chanting book and that chanting book. So it's in my head really, it's not in any chanting book, but the closest I can find to represent what I'm saying in the morning is in that Wat Marp Jan chanting book that is available to anybody online. So I think on that note, I will leave it there for today and continue again with more of your comments and questions, which I'm very happy to continue to receive from you all, as well as your kind words of encouragement to keep me striving on diligently with my own practice when I'm not talking to you for this very short part of the day. And I'm blessed and fortunate to have this environment to continue that practice here, and hopefully not only for just my own benefit, but for others also. So on that note, if there's something useful, please use it. Otherwise, just let it go. Until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.